So, Joe Shields.
Yes, sir.
Do you think an 11-year-old can bring down the house?
Oh, yeah. Fate has a sense of humor.
You're going to call this fate? This 11-year-old, I mean, he wouldn't take anything to see what's behind the fence.
You know, you have to be ready for all contingencies.
And this is where the 11-year-old meets the social evil.
Yeah.
I can dig it.
I can dig it.
This is the Can You Dig It podcast. We crawl into the crypts, gardens, and forgotten cemeteries. Join Dan Fuller, your resident cemetery chronicler, and Joe Shields, the plot-loving development exec, as we unearth the dark secrets of St. Louis and Bellefontaine Cemetery and beyond. From garden geeks to history buffs with a taste for the macabre, as well as fans of iconography, this is your podcast. We love diving deep into the shadows of history. Let's dig in.
So my name is Joe Shields. I am the Director of Development for Bellefontaine Cemetery and Arboretum in St. Louis, Missouri. And it is my distinct pleasure to be sitting next to Dan Fuller, Cemetery Chronicler for Bellefontaine Cemetery and Arboretum.
And I do have to say that our friend Joe Shields, who just introduced me, started as a volunteer at Bellefontaine Cemetery and has now finagled himself into the position of Director of Development at Bellefontaine Cemetery and Arboretum, the oldest garden cemetery west of the Mississippi. And at this point, I would like to introduce also Mr. Christopher Gordon, who is riding shotgun with us, again, who I'm going to let him give all of the bells and whistles of his name so that it gets done right.
So, yes, I'm Christopher Allen Gordon, Director of Library and Collections at the Missouri Historical Society, and it is great to be here.
We appreciate you being on with us. It gives us a level of elevation as far as what we're attempting to do here with Can You Dig It? And I think Joe has some stats he'd like to share with us so we can kind of get our theme moving.
Yeah, so, gentlemen, I got some stats I'm going to run by you, and hopefully our listeners are going to dig what I'm laying down here. So what if I told you St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department has registered 1,284 prostitutes in 136 brothels, 9 houses of ill repute, and 243 single rooms?
And was that just last year, or what period of time are we talking about?
We're going to go back to 1871.
Okay, 1870. That's the sweet spot.
So what does that mean anything to you?
Well, that's a lot of soiled doves.
It is. It is.
Well, when I'm good, I'm very good. But when I'm bad, I'm better.
You come on over, my soiled dove.
The West is too wild for a frail woman like me.
And I guess that makes the topic for today. And that the soiled dove is a kind of scaled back title for a lady of the evening, to use contemporary terminology, or someone who is working the second oldest profession.
I believe it's the oldest profession.
Oldest profession. Okay.
Fallen woman was a favorite term.
Fallen woman.
The phrases are just mind-boggling.
My favorite's the body house. I mean, that sounds like something I want to go to.
I just couldn't imagine things of this nature being printed nowadays.
So it's nice to know that the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department has kept up with this, kind of checking off another number here and there. So
I know I'm jumping a little bit ahead, but we're going to hear the term social evil law later on in this podcast. But speaking of police department, the very first St. Louis Metropolitan Police Chief, James McDonough, who is a Bellefontaine resident, by the way, he was an enthusiastic, and I'm quoting, enthusiastic backer of prostitution being legalized in the city of St. Louis.
Yeah, I think that's one of those things, being what some would deem a Western outpost early, as there were more men than women in the city of St. Louis. I know that is, and again, to put people into kind of historic context, we're kind of starting our conversation in the era of and just before the Civil War. So that's going to be 1861 to 65 for the Civil War. A little bit before that, when some of these ladies are setting up shop, and we'll talk about a few of them who have made it to the ranks of being a part of even an exhibit at the Missouri Historical Society.
Yeah.
So just a few years ago, Eliza Haycraft was known as one of the 50 people of focus in the STL 250 display, which Bellefontaine Cemetery and Arboretum took a part in. And Eliza Haycraft is one of those stories that, as we go on, we find out more and more detail.
I love Eliza's story because she is one of the great philanthropists of 19th century St. Louis.
Well, development's going to like that part, of course. So she started out in Callaway County.
That rings a bell with me, yes.
Callaway County, Missouri. She had relations outside of the institution of marriage. She basically was ostracized by her family. She stole her father's canoe as the lore, made her way to St. Louis, and actually waffled between St. Louis and New Orleans for a while before setting up shop in St. Louis pre-Civil War. And during that time, she would ultimately end up with 5 brothels. And as Manuel Garcia, our old gatekeeper, used to say, servicing both sides of the Civil War. And so by the time of her, we'll call it retirement from this activity, she had amassed in dollars today something equivalent to around $28 million. And to Joe's whole point, she was very philanthropic, knowing that her monies came from the Civil War, so Civil War orphans and widows, she was very philanthropic with. And she would have one of the largest funerals at that time, somewhere in the neighborhood of 5,000 attended. And to give you a real perspective of how important she was in the city of St. Louis, and this is not an obituary, but it was a full-page newspaper that talked about Eliza, her life, and her death.
And you see individuals like this throughout the American West, too. And it always reminds me of Gunsmoke. You know, Miss Kitty.
Kitty, I always figured that what you did's your own business. You know that.
Yeah, you always have. You know, women have the reputation for it, but I swear men are every bit as nosy and every bit as gossipy.
Don't be too hard on us, Kitty. We were just a little bit worried about you, that's all.
And that whole idea of the prostitute, the hooker with a heart of gold, right? And you wonder if Eliza Haycraft might have been the, whoever the writer had in mind when writing that story. But, she really does in so many ways epitomize so many of these women because, again, they're girls from the country, they're coming to the big city, they don't have any skills.
She could never even sign her name.
Yeah, and the prominent occupations for women at that time, teachers, the nursing is just starting to get started. But you have to have some kind of training and education for that, and obviously she did not. So,
well, she had some moxie. She had some skills about her because she would become a soiled dove and then become a madam to an apex, having 5 different brothels. And this is where I'll throw in some things we've kind of learned along the way. First of all, Eliza Haycraft started off life as Eliza Harper. John Haycraft was her husband, who seems to have been a bigamist. And so I think that tainted her view of the institution of marriage just a little bit. And then at the end of her life, when she is writing out her will, she has some siblings, and she takes very good care of her sisters, with the caveat that if they were ever to marry, those men would never have any rights to their inheritance. Mm. So, you feel like maybe something happened in her past that's setting that tone for that. Mm-hmm. But she is one of our better known madams of St. Louis. So for Eliza, who, not being able to sign her own name or read legal notices and things, she does have some backers. She has people who will, even in her death, be her executives. And I think they took very good care of her. Did they take care of her the best? No, because that'll lead to yet another story at Bellefontaine Cemetery that she was disallowed any kind of monumentation, and further research proves that to be false. She actually had coping, which is that low retaining wall, but the executor, it seems, never executed doing a marker for her. But these are people who, probably got their own fair share of the cut, and how big a cut, we may never know. Mm-hmm. But she did have some support from that standpoint. But she had to have some moxie to do that, because as we're going to hear in this next story of yet another madam, the things can get out of control just a little bit.
Exactly. So, one thing that may surprise people is the fact that there was, despite the fact that St. Louis was growing so quickly, in the antebellum period. But we had very little, if any, law enforcement in the city. So by 1849, 1850, there's almost 80,000 people in St. Louis. There were 11 men who made up what was called the day watch and the night watch, and these were volunteers. They weren't even a paid police force in the city, and they were appointed by the mayor. They had no training. It was just, I have a buddy, I'll give him a job type of deal. Well, in 1849, there was a woman by the name of Madame Clementine, and she had a house that sat basically where Court of Honor is by Soldiers Memorial today. And again, when you're thinking about the movies and things like that, they usually show these houses as being either upstairs of a saloon, or maybe it's this freestanding house, but it's, it looks like a 2-story regular house or whatever.
And she's got some property.
Yeah, she had a lot of property.
19 pieces of real estate here.
Yeah, and the main house was surrounded completely by a privacy fence. So why? Well, because, you don't want your neighbors to see you coming to see Madame Clementine, right?
Yeah, especially the children.
Especially the children. So, funny you should bring up children. So, out on the street is a 11-year-old kid by the name of John Kennedy, and he wants to see behind that fence. So he's like crawling up on the fence, and she had basically what you might call him a bouncer. It was a German immigrant. His last name was Meyercourt, and he was trying to shoo this kid away. He was like, get off the fence, get off the fence. And John Kennedy wasn't having it. He wanted to see what was beyond that fence.
It's a precocious 11-year-old.
Yes. And so Meyercourt says, if you don't leave, I'm going to shoot you. And the kid still doesn't leave. So Meyercourt takes out his pistol and he fires it in the air. So not only does this startle John Kennedy, but it alerts everyone on the street
that something's going on.
Something's going on. So they all come after Meyercourt, hey, this guy's, after this, he's going to shoot this little boy. Somebody actually takes a shovel and hits Meyercourt on the head, knocks him down. He gets back up, he runs into Madame Clementine's to take shelter, and while this is all going on, there's more and more people that are gathering on the street.
Here comes the city.
And there's only one officer that's on the scene, and, he's not doing much. So eventually this crowd gathers, they start throwing things. Madame Clementine comes out on the balcony, basically, and says, Meyercourt's gone,
Left out the back door.
Yeah, he's left out the back door. You can, go home, basically. Well, somebody takes a rock and hits Madame Clementine, knocks her off her feet. She rolls down the stairs. All hell breaks loose at that point. The crowd comes charging through the gates, basically, and they start banging through the door. They get through. The inmates, as the girls are called,
the ladies,
they take off, and these guys just ransack the house. They're smashing the furniture. She has these houses were well furnished. They had to be comfortable places.
They had exclusive clientele.
That's right. And so there was a pianoforte. They smash it.
Expensive break.
And then they go upstairs. They pull out all the inmates' clothes out of their dressers and so forth. They're throwing it out the windows.
So this sounds like one heck of a party. And so I think when we come back, we'll let everybody know how it ends.
I can dig that.
Got a dream, a passion, a product, a service, a brand you want the world to know about?
In a world of noise, you need a way to cut through. And today, the most powerful voices aren't the loudest. They're the most specific.
Niche podcasts are exploding. building loyal, engaged communities around every topic imaginable.
Listeners aren't just tuning in.
They're connecting,
trusting,
and buying.
You don't have to be a tech wizard or a radio pro to make it happen. We get it.
Your expertise is your passion, not production. That's where we come in. At Trevian Entertainment Group, we handle the heavy lifting. From recording and editing to getting your show on all the major platforms, we provide a turnkey solution. We're the award-winning producers behind some of the world's most successful niche podcasts.
We'll help you craft a show that sounds polished, professional, and powerful. This isn't just about starting a podcast.
It's about building an authority, creating a community, and turning your dream into a thriving business.
Don't let your voice stay silent. Go to TrevianStudios.com, TREVIAN.com, and start your podcasting journey today.
So we are back, and Joe Shields, our Director of Development, and I, Dan Fuller, Cemetery Chronicler at Bellefontaine Cemetery, have the distinct pleasure and honor of being here with Christopher Gordon, who is associated with the Missouri Historical Society, specifically, and I love using those initials, the LRC, Library Research Center, which is the basically archive of the Missouri Historical Society. So for every one thing you see over at the History Museum, how many do you think you have squirreled away?
In terms of
collection?
Oh, collections. Oh, well, we have over 1 million photographs and prints. We have 7,900 linear feet of archives. We have 175,000 objects.
Yeah, they're not hurting.
No.
That's a lot of years of collections and exhibits for the future. And coming back, we're having one hell of a party at Madame Clementine's, and I think Christopher Gordon's just about to tell us how this party ends up.
So the party ends with everyone getting arrested, basically.
That's a lot of work for that one guy.
This little kid. I'll do to this little kid.
I'll do the little John Kennedy. So they're all arrested. They're all put on trial. Meyer Court actually gets off because, and this seems like a legitimate excuse, they were going to charge him with attempted murder of John Kennedy, assaulting this child, but he manages, or his attorney manages to make the argument that they were probably, Madame Clementine is the one that probably told him to do this, or at least
so he's an
permission.
Instrument, though.
He was an instrument, so he's acquitted. So then Madame Clementine is brought up on charges as well, keeping a bawdy house, or house of ill fame, and all that good stuff. And her attorney is A.P. Field. So if you know the Field House here in St. Louis, that's the same family. This goes all the way to the Supreme Court. And
that darn little 11-year-old.
Again.
So in the end, Madame Clementine decides this isn't worth it. I'm giving it all up. And she doesn't do any prison time or anything like that, but she's had her fill.
She's going to hang up her shingle.
She's going to hang up her shingle. But what's interesting is she gets married right in the middle of this. She marries a German immigrant. This guy was an inventor. He was, he was doing well for himself. And he basically turns her into an honest woman.
Isn't it supposed to be the other way around?
So much so that she is, more or less accepted into middle-class St. Louis society. And in 1866, she is a member of the St. Louis Horticulture Society.
Oh, we got to tell James about that.
Which reminds me of that old joke, you can lead a horse to water, but not a horticulture. Yeah. But anyway.
Oh.
So she actually wins for her rose arrangements the Horticulture Society Rose Award of 1866, and everyone lives happily ever after.
And the true end to that story, since we are on the Bellefontaine Cemetery and Arboretum podcast, is they are both laid to rest in our public lot 24 at Bellefontaine Cemetery, and both unmarked. And one of the little monikers that I like to use at the cemetery is Bellefontaine Cemetery, where every stone tells a story, but not every story has a stone. And so through Christopher Gordon's efforts here, we're able to give voice to that. Now, there was a term that I definitely want to bring up, and that was something that our friend Joe said, social evils. Do you want to expand on that a little bit?
So, again, I want to touch on the vernacular of this era because it was just amazing some of the terms that I hear reading through newspapers, legal documents of the day, census records. Christopher, do you want to touch on that real quick? And then I'll get back to the social evils in a second.
So, cities all across the country were wrestling with this problem of prostitution.
I call it an institution.
An institution, yes. So, as Joe was reading off those stats earlier, that's a lot of people. That's a lot of women. A lot of arrests and
a lot of activity.
Yeah.
I try.
But the main problem, what really concerned, people think, it's the morality of it, but that really wasn't the issue with city leaders. It was the health issue, because venereal diseases, especially syphilis, obviously this is what was spreading through the community.
And that's got a negative economic impact.
Exactly. Yeah. And, it's a true health issue because these men who are using, who are visiting these houses.
The services?
Obviously they weren't telling their wives that they're doing this, and then they go home and
bring it home,
have relations with their wives, and then they come down with syphilis. So it was very bad. So there was basically two camps. Do we regulate it, or do we crack down on it even further? And it was decided, at least in St. Louis, with this social evil ordinance, that they would do their best to regulate it. And so these women were expected to get regular health checks and to be monitored and so forth. They all had to be licensed.
Yeah, that's my favorite part of the ordinance.
Yeah.
That it was allowable as long as it was a licensed employee.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes. But the problem was, right off the bat, these women didn't want to go to the doctor. And I'm sure they knew that they had these diseases, so they weren't going to go to the doctor and get, fixed, or they weren't going to lose their license, basically. So it was just one regulatory failure after another.
So an example of this, again, using someone at the cemetery, is Louisa Allen, who, when the social evils ordinance was put in place, said, hey, here I am. In fact, I have a bawdy house, and I have 6 women, described again as your term, inmates, and even had 3 others employed as domestic servants. So she's keeping house and not afraid to do that. But yeah, there were some remedies to what would be one of those infections that might take place. And those were not happy things. Those might be things like mercury injections and things of that nature, which is not going to make for much of a suitable inmate after the point. And the really interesting thing is there was actually a hospital built with these revenues that were generated from the licensing, and that was the Social Evils Hospital. And to put things in the historic context and context to the day, that's basically our Sublet Park today at the intersection of Sublet and Arsenal. And so that's where that hospital was. And as we'll kind of kick back, the Social Evils Ordinance was only there for a short period of time.
Yeah, only 4 years, really.
4 years. And when they tried to reuse that hospital as a women's hospital, it had such a stigma about it that nobody could use it. And as I like to say now, they basically tore that down, and I think that's still where the tennis courts are today.
Yeah, they tried to turn it into a maternity hospital, and so if you can imagine taking your wife, I have to take her to the hospital. No, you're not taking me to that hospital. That's
the former Social Evils Hospital. But we have story after story of people who are involved in this trade. Some of them end in very sad ways. Ellie Bebo, who is also with us at Bellefontaine Cemetery, was 21 years of age when she took her own life by strychnine poisoning. This is one of those, it may be the oldest profession, but it is not necessarily a profession that one wants to get into.
Yeah. Well, my favorite story from Social Evil Ordinances is actually there was a lot of money being made.
Because of taxes. They got taxed.
Well, not just that, but now it's legal. And there were men and women who were maybe becoming madams and pimps, basically, and setting up these various houses all over town. And there were businessmen, legitimate businessmen, that were also funding these places. So there was investment going on as well. And we'll probably never know who all those individuals were as well. But one of my favorite stories is of Kate Clark. And Kate Clark, she claimed to be the last wife of William Quantrell, the Confederate bushwhacker guerrilla. She said when she was 16 years old, they got married just in the final weeks of his life. She comes to St. Louis after the Civil War. She opens a house. Interestingly enough, in the 1870 census, under where it says occupation, she and her inmates are listed as whores, as their actual occupation. And this shows how lucrative this becomes. So she opens up her own house, a separate house, where she has 4 inmates that are working for her in a separate house. Joe, how much do you think she was paying rent for this house in 1871?
Rent just for the
house.
Just for the property.
For the house. How much do you think she was paying in rent?
I would say in 1871, given the popularity of this and the prominence of it, I would say $2,000 a month. In 18, not adjusting for inflation, in that time frame,
of money.
I'd say $2,000 a month.
$2,500.
It's close.
She was paying $2,500. Guess who she was renting the house from?
Oh no. See, I couldn't tell you. I mean,
You can imagine.
I can imagine. Who?
The St. Luke's Hospital Association.
Oh.
Oh my God.
Well, hey, you got to make money somehow or another. I mean, and to let people know what we're kind of talking about.
The Alanis Morissette, Isn't This Ironic, is playing in my head.
So just to put this into some historic context, and I can't put it to 1871, but in the house that I own, which is 1897, when it was for rent, and we're talking about a 3-story house in 1900, that was $30 a month rent. Mm-hmm. So $2,500. Well, 25-something years before that versus that, there's a little bit of gouging going on.
Yeah.
You guys like to talk about the money a little bit more than I do, so why don't you kind of give the financial aspect of running a Bowdy house?
Well, part of the Social Evils Act was that the institutions were taxed to make sure that, health standards were kept up, and, I'm using air quotes.
Yes. So that's coming from the madam and the individual inmates.
Yes. As part of the ordinance, the idea was there was going to be a revenue stream from the services that were provided, which would turn around and be used by the city as part of the regulation.
Right. Send little 11-year-old Mr. Kennedy to school.
Yeah, exactly.
So he's not looking through the first knothole gang.
But to maintain things like the Social Evil Hospital so they could have a handle on controlling venereal diseases and so forth in the city.
I'm curious if St. Luke's had some sort of LLC collecting this money, like the Better Day Corporation, or something other than the actual...
The person who just said that was Joe Shields. He could be reached at.
Yeah, I've seen it all.
So I can tell you a dollar in this time period in the 1870s was equivalent to about $25.
According to an inflation calculator from the government, $2,500 in 1870 is equivalent to the purchasing power of $61,650 today.
And that's a lot of social evils.
So the St. Luke's Hospital Association was raking it in.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Doctors of the day had said that this prostitution was an inevitable accompaniment of city life. And the vote in the St. Louis City Council to pass this was 16-5. Little to no opposition. I'm sure this sailed right on through.
And how many men were on that?
Oh, I'm sure all of them.
All 16?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Just checking. Just wanted to make sure.
They probably started the process at 3:01 and it was over by 3:02.
Yeah.
So we laugh and we giggle through all of this, and I think that's our way of making ourselves comfortable with it. But this is our history. This is where we came from, and as you kind of alluded at the beginning of this is the oldest profession, and where cities that weren't there, 50 years ago, then have 80,000 with 11 guys on day watch. I think this is the kind of, camaraderie that comes about. And so how do you put a handle on that? How do you put it into control? And, here we are laughing about it in 2025, and I'm sure we still have some issues out there.
Yeah.
So this is one of those things we can't run from, but it is a great way for us to kind of look at the history and see that, some of the, when Grandma and Grandpa talk about the good old days, is this what they're really talking about?
Yeah. All in context.
Yeah. All in context.
All in context.
So can you dig this topic?
I do. There's, it's a salacious topic right off the bat, but just the tentacles that come off of this, which would be how the vernacular that was used to describe several facets of it. The financial end of this.
Who's benefiting?
The fact that this only lasted 4 years. Mm-hmm. Given I'm sure that there was a ton of steam going into getting this passed, and then just 4 years is not a long time.
Yeah, that's when that ordinance lasted. I got news for you.
Oh, yeah.
It's still going on. So some other individuals at Bellefontaine Cemetery, like William Greenleaf Eliot, known for his institution known as Washington University, basically stood up and said, if we're going to be a legitimate city moving forward, we have to clean up some of this act. And again, he didn't do this alone. There were a lot of other people who came together for that. But you definitely had the clergy rallying behind it. Also, you have to stop and think about this time period, 1870. This is the beginning of the suffragist movement. And so there's a lot of women who are becoming mobilized. And so their voice is being heard. And so social evils for St. Louis was just that 4 year slice.
Yeah, by the spring of 1874, legal prostitution was gone.
Yeah. And women like Susan B. Anthony are waging a national campaign against this. But there were cities where they were trying to do this type of stuff. Probably the most famous is New Orleans with Storyville, which was a very similar situation. They were trying to control venereal disease in the city, but also the military was working with them because of sailors and so forth, and ultimately that failed as well.
Lesson learned.
Yes.
So, but I do have to really say that I appreciate the scholarly wisdom of our friend Christopher Gordon here today, who has shined so much light. And I do want him to make mention of Madame Clementine in a publication that you can secure.
What's the name of this publication?
So you can read about the Madame Clementine story in Fire, Pestilence, and Death, St. Louis, 1849, by yours truly.
In fact, I've got a copy I've got my hands on right now.
Okay, I'm going to take it.
No, it's mine. So to kind of finish this out, there is a wealth of resource here at the LRC, the Library Research Center, which, again, I'm going to let the man himself do the numbers, give you the address, and all of the times and availability.
Yes, so if you are interested in doing genealogy, house history, neighborhood history, the history of St. Louis or early Missouri, you can find us at 225 South Skinker, just on the west side of Forest Park. We are free and open to the public. Our reading room is absolutely beautiful. Even if you're not interested in doing the research, you can just come and see the reading room, which is fabulous. We're in the old United Hebrew Congregation Synagogue. A lot of great history with the building itself. We are open. Our normal hours of operation are Tuesday through Friday, noon to 5, and Saturday, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m.
And I will tell you, there is no better resource. And the way I got introduced to the LRC is by doing house history. And that's how I can tell you that our house was rented for $30 a month back in 1900. So that's a testimonial.
Right.
I can dig it.
I can dig it.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. Also, please share this episode with your family and friends if you got value from the episode as well as the podcast. You can do it right from the platform you are listening on. Plus, take a screenshot and tag us and tag yourself. We are at Podcast Can You Dig It on Instagram. The Can You Dig It podcast is produced by Peace Off Productions and the Trevian Entertainment Group.